If you've watched Adventure Time, chances are you know about the Great Mushroom War. You know, the disastrous conflict that destroyed human civilization and allowed the Land of Ooo to take over. The show's mentioned the war by name once or twice, and the aftermath has contributed to the show's backgrounds for as long as the show has been around. But when exactly did the war occur? Well, according to the episode Simon and Marcy, it all went down a little over 996 years ago. Shortest episode ever, right? Of course not, you're not gonna fall for that. From the show's perspective, when exactly was 996 years ago? Can we be comfortable in saying that the Mushroom War happened in some sort of alternate history of ours? Or is it just that the war hasn't happened yet? Should we be preparing to duck and cover soon? For a while now, one of the persisting theories about the Mushroom War's timeline was that it all went down sometime in the 1980s. At the earliest, 1985. And there are a few clues we can gather to support that claim. One thing we can do is look around for any remnants of the one thing that can date a time period more than anything else: technology. Whenever we have a flashback to the pre-war world, the show seems very careful to not date itself too much and have a bit of a timeless feel. But we're gonna poke around in the garbage to try to yank some of that timelessness away. Science! In the show's opening, we can see a TV formatted with rabbit ears, which were already falling out of fashion by the time the 80s rolled around, let alone any later than that. Also featured in the show are things like cassette tapes, a drive-in theater, and in the episode Video Makers, a camcorder that seems to record onto VHS or VHS-C tapes. Incidentally, VHS tapes are also pretty frequently used in Adventure Time. Looking at the backgrounds of the show, it's pretty difficult to find any technology that seems to have been made after the 1980s. Another huge piece of supporting evidence comes from some of the music in the series. In the episode Simon and Marcy, we see Simon, who is yet to become Ice King at this point, sing the theme song to Cheers to keep him from slipping into madness. Isn't this show such a joyous romp? Now, while Cheers ran from 1982 to 1993, it's become part of the public consciousness, as the show has been referenced and parodied countless times since its airing. But in the episode Everything Stays, one of the human survivors, Two Bread Tom, goes on about the importance of humanity's culture and singing the songs of their people. He then goes on to sing the theme song to the show Mr. Belvedere, which premiered in 1985, setting our timeline for the earliest possible year that the bombs fell. Now, I like to consider myself somewhat of a TV historian, and I also know other people who know this era of TV way better than I do. But while we can all remember the theme to Cheers, who still remembers the theme song for Mr. Belvedere? Alright, stop. I know a bunch of you are in the comments right now telling me that you remember the theme song to Mr. Belvedere. But you have to admit, it's not exactly a theme that stood the test of time. Not in the same way Cheers has, at least. But it is further proof of the world coming to an end in the 80s. Since the song was fresh in Two Bread Tom's mind, it became the song to pass down to future generations. There was also another thing happening in the 80s that might fit our narrative here. I think it was in the news once or twice. It was this little incident called the Cold War. Don't worry, we're not going to get too political though. While the Cold War may have come to an end in 1991, it was still the biggest nuclear scare of all time. And that mushroom bomb we see in the episode Finn the Human certainly looks like a nuclear warhead, doesn't it? You can call that last point a stretch if you want, but there seems to be a lot of evidence here that the Mushroom War came to a head sometime in the 1980s. But is there anything else in the show that could tell us otherwise? There are a couple of prevalent arguments against the Mushroom War happening in the 80s. Some theories posit that it may have happened sometime in the early 21st century. So, to clear this theory, we just need to scour the show for more modern things, right? Let's start with the ever-changing nature of language. One thing that might refute the 80s argument might actually be as simple as how the characters talk. The inclusion of text speak like BRB and OMG by some of the characters in their everyday dialogue would have to mean that the bombs fell sometime after language began to incorporate these sorts of shorthand phrases, right? Except while text speak may not have surged in popularity until cell phones became widespread, it did still exist far before then. People have been playing with the English language for centuries, but this specific shortening of phrases can be dated back all the way to at least September of 1917, where OMG, specifically noted as standing for Oh My God, was spotted in a letter written by Lord John Fisher to future Prime Minister Winston Churchill. And if it was showing up in this capacity, in letters detailing prevailing military efforts of the First World War, it's probably fair to assume that this wasn't the first time someone had done this. Getting back to Adventure Time, it's possible that the characters could have come up with this language methodology themselves. Given how much language can change in 1,000 years, it's possible it was just forgotten and then reinvented. So far, our 80s theory still holds water. But the other big time marker we can look for, again, is technology in the show. With so much pre-war tech to be spotted, we actually can spy one or two pieces of technology that would date civilization past the 1980s. In the episode The Lich, we can see Finn laughing uncontrollably in front of a G3 iMac, which didn't start to roll out to the general public until 1998, which throws a bit of a wrench into our theory. But probably the most convincing argument against the mushroom bomb going off in the 80s comes from the recent episode Elemental. In the episode, we meet Ice Elemental Patience St. Pim, who froze herself just before the mushroom bomb detonated. When Finn, Jake, and Ice King free her, her first question is, what year is it? And of course, Finn has no idea how to answer that question. That would have been too easy. But later in the episode, Patience pulls out a mobile phone to take a picture. Here we have a character from before civilization was exploded carrying technology from the time. Looking at the phone, it seems far less sophisticated than any 3G phone, which marked the beginning of smartphones. In fact, it seems to bear a resemblance to something like a 2G phone. See how it's got that classic brick design with the keypad underneath? This design is almost universally characteristic of phones that came out in the mid-90s to early 2000s, just before touchscreens started to come into play. So what does this tell us? Based on the technology alone, it seems pretty irrefutable that the Mushroom War wasn't destroying Earth in the 80s. But if that's not the case, when exactly did it occur? This is all speculation on my part now, but based on the technology we've seen and the state that the world appeared to be in before it was destroyed, it seems possible that the Mushroom War did indeed occur in the early 21st century. Like, really early. Like January 1st, 2000 early. Based on the evidence examined, we can theorize that the Mushroom War was actually Y2K. Yes, really. You remember the Y2K scare? When we were all foolish and naive and thought the world was going to come to an end when the year 2000 hit because computers wouldn't be able to handle it? People were scared that missile controls would malfunction and they'd be launched, effectively ending the world. It was a possible cataclysmic event that we all saw coming, just like Patience St. Pim did before she froze herself to avoid it. Seems that in Adventure Time's universe, the Mushroom War could have been caused by human error rather than actual conflict. As for the Mushroom War taking place in the 80s, I've put this Y2K theory forward, but nothing in the world of Adventure Time is impossible, what with all the interdimensional portals and the jumbled canon. So I'm rating the plausibility of the Mushroom War taking place in the 80s 1.5 snails out of 5. So that's what I was able to make of all this, but what about you guys? Any eagle eyes out there spot some technology we might have missed or found some evidence of the war happening at a different time? And what burning questions do you still want Adventure Time to answer? Be sure to leave a comment down below, and if you have any theories you'd like us to take a look at in the future, drop another comment, let us know. And don't forget to subscribe to channel Frederator for more cartoon conspiracy.